All right, hello everyone. I'm back to go over how to add random colors to your puzzle pieces. So I'm just going to preview the game right now, and I've already added this in. Your games probably only have the spawning randomly in those spawn locations and the random location. But because I've added random colors, every time I press R to restart or every time I load the game, the colors are assigned differently to the pieces. So it just adds a little bit more variation to the game, even though it's really simple right now with only 2 levels. All right, so I have my game script, which I'm just going to switch over to. I don't need to be in the game scene, but I wanted to show you I have a couple new variables that I've added to the script. First of all, I have this new onReady variable so that it's ready at the very start, called every piece, and it just has this empty array right now. And the previous variable is for just the moving game pieces. This variable is for absolutely every game piece. The next new variable is an export variable for the material folder path, which is a string, which we can see right here. Now I have 2 ways, or I guess 3 ways. I could just type this, but I can also just literally drag the material folder over here. If I didn't have anything, I could also drag it over here in the inspector, and that would work just as well. So a couple of ways that I can get that path in accurately. So you'll notice in the ready function, I'm calling 2 new functions. Just going to minimize the random functions so that we can move on. All right, so we have this function that we're calling it ready. So it's to get all of the pieces for our every piece array, and it is just going to fed a node as a parameter, as an argument. Right now it's being fed getTree.root to just access any nodes that are at the root of the scene tree. So if the node at the root of the scene tree is a mesh instance 3D, we're appending that node to the every piece array. Now, this part right next is really interesting. So we're getting any children from that node, and for each child, and child could be called anything, we're actually going to keep running the function. And so this is making the function recursive. And so this is just any child. So whatever term you used over here, we want the same thing as our argument right here. And so it's going to keep running through each level of children to find every mesh 3D and append it to our every piece. Now, this is something you have to be really careful about. Recursive functions can cause what we call infinite loops or stack overflows because it just keeps running and running and running. So that can make your game crash, or it can make it really slow down as it continues to run. Now, our game isn't that complicated. It doesn't have very many pieces, and it doesn't have many levels to check through, so it's not going to be a problem here being recursive. But in a more complicated game, this could be a problem, so you might want to have some sort of stopping condition, like doing this within a range, or a certain number of levels instead of all of them. So just something to watch out for. So at the ready, it is just adding all the mesh instances 3Ds to our empty every piece array. Now, also at ready, we're setting a random color for the pieces. So we have this new function called random color. We have a couple new variables. So there's a variable to represent all of our materials, which is an array. And so we're using direct access to get any files at our material folder path, which we've set previously with our export variable. We're also setting a variable to represent the index number of the material in the array, and the type is just an integer, and right now it's just empty. Now, if the material array is smaller than the size of the every piece array, then there aren't enough materials to assign because we want all of the pieces to have their own material. So we're just going to print an error message. Otherwise, if there are enough materials, we're going to shuffle the material array. Whenever the material array is shuffled, we're setting the index to 0, so it's starting at the very beginning of the array. And then we're adding a for loop. Mesh is going to represent each mesh that's in every piece. So for each mesh, we're going to have a new variable material, which is going to start as null, but we're going to load the material path combined with the index from the material array. And so that is going to load the material with that index number as our new material. At that point, we want to increase the index by 1 so that the next time this runs, it'll assign a different color. If the new material exists, so it's not null, for that mesh object, we're going to use the material override property and set it to be our new material, which we've loaded up here. And otherwise, if the new material is null, we're just going to add a print statement saying there's no material to use as our error message. So that is it for randomizing the color. I'm going to go back to my controller over here. Command R. So again, now when I play, each time my colors are going to be different, the piece location is going to be different, and the piece rotation is going to be different. And each time I press R to reload, those change. Now, one thing that I want to mention is we are relying on having enough materials. So if we have a smaller number of materials than we have pieces, this isn't going to work. Now, we should automatically have enough materials to use. And in a previous tutorial, I've gone over how to extract your materials from the Blender objects to put them into the materials folder. So when I've already saved materials in the materials folder, I can always right click and duplicate, or just use Command D, give it another name. Maybe I want this one to be some sort of teal color. It's going to look the same to start with, but if I double click on it, I can access the color in the inspector. The albedo is the actual color. So I'm going to change this to some sort of teal. I can play around with the other settings as I want to. You'll notice the preview isn't going to update right away, but when I play through, now that color has been added to the rotation. As soon as I've saved, it should end up updating the little icon there. So that seems to be working perfectly, and I can keep adding as many colors as I want. If you don't want to use one of the Blender materials, you can always create your own material. So if I come over to one of my piece scenes, and previously I enabled editable children so that I can access the mesh. And from here, if it's something that I want to do, I can create a new standard material. When I click on the material, I can set whatever color I want to set, and then I can save that material in my materials folder with whatever name I want. And now I have that new material there. All right, so that's it for today.